Hi there, Pastor Lars Hammer here from Lord of Grace Lutheran Church in Marana, Arizona. I want to welcome you back to the Walk Through the Psalms Bible study. Today we're going to look at Psalm 84, verses 5 through 7. I'm calling this Highways to Zion. That's part of the passage. We will read through it. I'll read through it, and then I'll share my thoughts. We'll kind of walk through it and pick it apart a little bit. So, here we go. Happy are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. As they go through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The early rain also covers it with pools. They go from strength to strength. The God of gods will be seen in Zion. Okay, not a very long passage, kind of a cool one though. Let's start out with that. Happy are those whose strength is in you. That's kind of an interesting idea of strength. I got to thinking about what do we mean by strength? How do we understand that when we talk about strength? And I really realized there's kind of a couple ways to look at the idea of strength. One way is strength as sort of a power, domination thing. I'm strong because I can beat someone up. I have strength because I can conquer a weight, right? I can move that weight even when it doesn't want to move, with gravity or something. That's one understanding of strength, right? There's another understanding of strength that I think is more biblical, especially more in keeping with the Psalms, especially more in keeping with Jesus, which sees strength as more of an inner quality that comes from God, as an ability to deal with adversity, deal with outside stress, deal with roadblocks and obstacles that we encounter. That's the strength I think the psalm is talking about here. I don't think it's necessarily strength to conquer. There is plenty of that in the Psalms. I don't think this is that one. And so those whose strength is in the Lord. Well, what do I mean by that? You kind of think of what would you do if you were being, say, verbally attacked. You had a job to do, you had things to get done, and there's people verbally attacking you, they're slandering you, maybe they're on social media or something, and you have a job to do, and you feel like you have a calling, and all these trolls are around you. What are you going to do? I think it takes some real strength to be in a position like that and to continue to see your calling, to continue to see a purpose, to continue to be a loving person in the midst of all that kind of hate thrown at you. I think that takes real strength. I think not taking the bait when someone is trolling you takes real strength. I think not instantaneously fighting back when somebody annoys you takes real strength. I think responding to someone in love who treats you in a hateful way takes real strength. I think that's the kind of stuff that takes real strength. I've always tended to say restraint takes real strength. To just get mad and start flailing, that doesn't necessarily mean you have any strength. I might even argue that if you're flailing around and you take the bait and you overreact every time, in a sense, it's an admission that you feel powerless and you're trying to reestablish it. If you have an inner peace and an inner strength, when these things happen to you, you don't feel the need to do that. I don't need to prove to this troll over here, that that I'm not what they say they are. I am. There we go. That I am not what they say I am. There we go. That takes inner strength. And I think when we talk about strength, even in our culture, I think this is one of those things where I and some of my more fundamentalist kind of colleagues where we will differ. There's kind of this movement of men's ministry to make everything about sort of physical strength. I was watching a video. I don't have the link to it. You'd have to Google it. But there's some big men's conference somewhere, and they literally, I don't know if they bought a tank, they rented a tank. It was in this stadium, and they literally had cars piled up and a tank rolled in. Tanks for Jesus or something, I don't know. And it was very, strength. And I just thought that was odd. Like, I'm sure all the men in this huge stadium, in this auditorium, it looked like there were tens of thousands of them. We all have our issues and struggles in life, right? And we all want to appear strong. And I think sometimes our culture pressures us to always appear strong. I think sometimes there's a contradiction in our modern American world that wants you to be both super sensitive and yet super strong at the same time. How do you navigate that? And I'm sure every one of those guys had real things in their lives they needed to deal with, and they needed to hear, about God's grace, and they needed to have some of the peace of God in their hearts when dealing with the struggles that they're dealing with and the pressures in their lives. I think the theme of strength probably would have been a good one. I don't know how tanks prove my own spiritual strength unless they're just trying to find random symbols of masculinity. I don't know why a tank is any more masculine than anything else, but I digress a little bit, but I do believe that word strength is important, and how we understand it is important. Because when we see strength as the ability to be peaceful and loving in the face of obstacles, to be calm and non-retaliatory when provoked, if that's how we understand strength, that's a lot harder even than lifting weights all the time. And I do that. I know you can't tell, but I do that. It's that inner strength. So I think that's what they're talking about. Happy are those whose strength is in you. If my strength is based on physical strength, if it's based on a gun or a tank or a car or a machine, then my happiness, if my happiness and my strength are related, and my strength is somehow tied to something outside myself, then my happiness is only as strong as the thing I'm tied to. And if those things are gone, where is my happiness? That's why I think you can see some of these, spiritual, I'd say gurus or, monks, you'll see them too, and people will ask, well, how come you had this big fancy career, and you were making big bucks in pharmaceuticals, and then you went and became Brother John of the Franciscan Oblates? And he'd say, well, maybe all that, the money and the power and the status that came with it are not the things that make you happy. And my strength isn't there. And when your strength is in the Lord, those things, they don't seem as important. I've always tended to think that if external things are super important, then maybe you haven't found the strength in the Lord who makes those things not as important and not as necessary to your sense of happiness. So, see all that in just half a verse. So happy are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. Now, what is this? Zion is usually Jerusalem in the Bible when they say Zion. And sometimes it is sometimes there's an eternal heavenly kind of understanding of Jerusalem, but I think in this one, it's just plain Jerusalem, the physical place. This is about pilgrims. This is a psalm for pilgrims, people who live somewhere outside of Jerusalem, and they're making a trek, probably by foot, unless they were really rich, and they're making this long walk to Jerusalem, to Zion. They obviously are going to need physical strength, and they're going to need emotional strength to do this trip, and they're on the highways to Zion, whatever those roads are, those paths are. And then we get to verse 6. They go through the valley of Baca. We don't know exactly what valley this is. It's probably changed names tons of times in the last 2,500 years, but I guess it was a pilgrimage site. So people would go through Baca, and it's interesting, the psalmist kind of implies that people going through Baca make springs well up. Or is it that God wells up the springs for the pilgrims? The early rains cover it also with pools. So it's kind of a fun acknowledgement that, God brings the water for the pilgrims. The rains do it too. but God brings the rains too. So it's all kind of comes from the same place, I guess. But God is providing the nourishment for the pilgrims who are on their way. And then verse 7. They go from strength to strength. The God of gods will be seen in Zion. So strength to strength. When your strength is in God, it only improves. Your own sense may go up or down. Your own life may go up or down. But the strength that comes from God isn't a waning one because it's from God. And it goes from strength to strength. And the God of gods, what does that mean? In the ancient Middle East, even the Jewish people would talk about the gods that other people worshipped, and that the Lord God was above them. And sometimes they kind of hint that maybe they think those other gods might be real, but they're not as powerful. And then other times it's those gods clearly aren't real, and God is the only one, the true God among false gods. But that one is the God you're going to see when you make your pilgrimage and you get to Jerusalem. So God will provide you the strength to get through the valley of Baca, provide you the water, get you to Jerusalem, and there you will be able to see how the Lord God really is the greatest among all the gods. So there we go. Psalm 84. I hope you guys have a great day. Feel free to leave me any comments or questions, and we'll see you next week with the rest of Psalm 84. God bless.